Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Mercy of the God of War. Episode 13. Missandra and Dahlia both agreed to climb on Rune's back, behind Anur, as the green dragon was smaller and less scary to them than Cray. Sherian climbed on Cray's back after her mother, and both her and Karen helped Cassandra up. Just like that, the little group took off without much of a ceremony. It had been a little while since her last flight, and Cassandra took a deep breath, hoping she wouldn't get nauseous again. Slowly, the Imperial Palace got smaller under them, and she realized once again how big it actually was. She thought about her medicinal garden, and wished she could have brought it back with them. It was a pity she had only been able to use it a couple of times. As it was still quite early, the sky was colder than usual. Cassandra was wrapped up in one of the fur coats, and was held onto tightly by her prince, as usual, while Cray was peacefully flying to the Diamond Palace. The dragon knew the way all too well, it was an easy ride. Actually, it even bickered a bit with its younger brother, Rune, fooling around, growling at each other and trying to bite each other's tail playfully. They kept changing spots, one above and one under, until Karen and Anur had them stop before the women on both sides got sick. To Cassandra's surprise, Rune was slimmer and smaller, but considerably faster than the black dragon. Its personality, for what she had seen so far, seemed to match that of Anur, too, being more cunning and curious than Cray. The two of them kept playing more quietly for the rest of the ride, but as they arrived above the Diamond City, Cray got more interested in the Diamond Palace. The dragon accelerated a bit, in a hurry to land there. Both dragons knew the place well and didn't need to be told where to go. Another dragon's growls welcomed them as they landed in one of the larger gardens. "Hello, my darling," said Kareen, getting off first. Sry, the little dragon, was excited to see her, jumping all around the place and growling loudly. It even bumped into Cray a couple of times without caring. While Kareen caressed it, calming the young dragon a bit, Sherian jumped off Cray's back, and Karen helped Cassandra down. On another end of the garden, Anur was helping Dahlia and Missandra down. The two girls were a bit green and white, but they took deep breaths once they were on the grass, relieved. "I'm never, ever getting on one of those creatures again," muttered Missandra, still shaking a bit, walking back to Cassandra with a frown. Dahlia was quiet, but her expression was not good either. Cassandra felt a bit sorry for them. She had ridden on Cray's back over a dozen times, and was still feeling a bit sick at times. Moreover, the dragons had made the girls' first trip a bit rowdy. Behind them, Cray was a bit impatient. It kept growling and toddling in circles, getting grumpy. The Imperial concubines sighed. "Oh, enough, enough. Let's go." Cassandra, too, was sharing Cray's excitement, just a bit more quietly. They followed the Imperial concubine into several corridors. Unlike the Imperial Palace, the Diamond Palace was more dragon-friendly, and full of ruthless rooms. Hence, even if the adult-sized dragons couldn't follow in one room, they would find a way to reunite with the little group through another opening. Behind Cassandra, Missandra kept staring around, impressed, just like her sister the first time. Cassandra chuckled once she noticed this. Indeed, the Diamond Palace was much more to their taste, with all of its wild plants growing freely, wide open spaces, sunny chambers, and the many water fountains and natural rivers crossing here and there. Here it is. For once in the palace, Kareen had to open a lock for them to have access to another large indoor garden. It could be accessed through the open roof for the dragons, but for humans, it would have been impossible to climb, with such height and the slippery stone wall. Hence, when she walked in, Cassandra found Cray already circled up around the egg, rubbing its snout against it. Cassandra couldn't describe the warm feeling that filled her heart upon being reunited with the dragon egg. She walked up to it, putting her hands on its warm shell. "Is that?" asked Miss Andra. "Our future nephew's dragon," explained Sherian. Quickly, she explained to the younger sister about dragon eggs and their birth, while Cassandra and Cray were happily rediscovering the egg. It had indisputably grown since last time. It was now about as tall as a young child. Once again, it reacted to Cassandra's presence, the shiny light inside glowing where she was putting her hands, or where Cray was sniffing. "You're telling me the black dragon is a female," whispered Miss Andra, confused. "Dragons are a gender, neither female nor male," explained Kareen. "Dragons are a unique kind of creature, as they don't reproduce like humans or animals. They just need to pee and poop." Sherian. Behind them, Anura laughed, but was soon interrupted by some furious growls. Rune and Srai, curious, had shown up, the first above and the second from the door, and were brutally growled at by Cray. The black dragon was fiercely defending its egg, warning the two other dragons from coming closer. Actually, Cassandra noticed that, aside from her prince, Kareen, and her, none of the other people present had walked further than the entrance of the garden. Though she could understand about Miss Andra and Dahlia standing away from the black dragon, as its size was taking up most of the space, she was surprised that Anur and Sherian had also stayed back. She had thought it was because there wasn't much space, but seeing how even Rune and Srai couldn't approach the egg, Cassandra realized Cray would have probably chased them away too. She gently patted the black dragon to calm it down, while the other two gave up and retreated a bit. "This egg is getting bigger than expected," said Sherian. "Is it a problem?" asked Cassandra, worried. "Of course not. Your son will probably be stronger than the norm, but that's not so surprising given his lineage." Cassandra smiled. How she wished she could see her baby and his dragon soon. She wanted to guess its size, its color, but she truly had no idea. Would he be black like Cray? Or maybe another color? Rune and the other dragons were all of amazing colors as well. Cray, too, was affectionately rubbing its snout against the egg, growling softly. Had the black dragon missed the egg as well? After a while of watching the dragon's affectionate behavior, Cassandra stood up and walked to Karen, hugging her prince. Sometimes, she forgot that Cray was an embodiment of his tamer's emotions. The war god hugged her, keeping her in his arms, gently caressing her back. With a gesture from the imperial concubine, everyone else but the couple and the black dragon cleared the room in a few seconds to give them some privacy. As they were now alone in the little garden, Cassandra smiled and, with a bit of boldness, stood on her toes to kiss him lovingly. Of course, Karen answered her kiss back. For a while, they were alone with his dragon, exchanging tender kisses and hugging. Truth was, Cassandra hadn't been able to relax like this in a while. Not since they had left the Diamond Palace, actually. Now that they were back in Lady Karine's domain, the young concubine could finally breathe a little, and not be on guard at all times. Miss Andra was there too, so she didn't have to worry about her younger sister either. Those feelings transferred into her bold kisses and the hands with which she gently caressed her war god, her man. Karen was agreeably surprised. He had noticed Cassandra was uneasy during their stay at the Imperial Palace, but he had never thought coming back to the Diamond Palace would free her like that. For a while, they kept exchanging kisses, hugging, and caressing each other. However, they were unwilling to leave this room. As they both ran out of breath, Cassandra chuckled, resting her head on his shoulder, in a way that she could look at the egg and cray wrapped around it. "I hope it will rain soon," she whispered. "I don't want to part with you yet. I will be back as soon as I can. You can stay here, and rest. Take care of yourself and the baby." She nodded, putting her arms around his neck. Cassandra wasn't worried about staying behind at the Diamond Palace, but she hated the idea of parting with him. She had such fond memories of her time with him in the north, at the military camp. However, things were different this time. She couldn't follow him into this battle. Cassandra sighed and turned to Karen. "We have about a week, right?" she whispered. "Until the Imperial Army reaches here, yes. Let's just stay together as much as we can, please." Cassandra's begging voice, when she was pleading like that, was the most desirable thing in the world in the war god's eyes. Karen softly smiled, and without saying anything else, suddenly lifted her, taking her into a wild kiss, out of the room and to where they could really be alone. Cassandra had no idea how her prince had found a bedroom so easily, but at that moment, she didn't care much. He was carrying her effortlessly, her legs around his waist, and their kisses were getting wilder and wilder. She couldn't stop. The taste of his tongue, his scratchy cheeks, his hot breath. She was melting under his touch. Karen's hands were as hot, large, and pleasant as ever. Cassandra could feel all the soft fabric ruffled by his fingers, how he played with her skirt, the silk going up and down on her thighs. His hand found its way to her hair, undoing her hairdo, the pieces of metal falling one after the other onto the floor. As the hairpins kept coming out, her long hair came down, letting the prince play with it as much as he wanted. He would tangle her curls around his fingers, grasp it, hold it tight, and let go again. Cassandra was able to catch her breath when he moved on to kiss her exposed throat and giving her delicious chills. The touch of his lips drove her crazy anywhere they landed on. He was reckless, restless in covering her with savage kisses. She could hear herself moan and breathe louder, unable to hold it. Cassandra brushed his hair with her fingers, looking to lock her lips on his again. She wanted him so badly already. "Karen," she called him with a begging voice. "Keep going. Please. Keep going, Cassandra." She wasn't even trying to hold her voice back anymore. "Karen, please, please. Please. You're so mean," she whispered with a cute pout. The war god took the compliment silently, caressing her hair. Cassandra sighed and put her hands on his torso, her fingers stroking down the lines of his muscles. She loved his build so much. Every lump was perfectly defined, the silent strength under his skin oozing with his breath. He was truly a war god. No sculpture could have depicted such a perfect drawing more accurately. When she was about to reach her goal, Karen stopped her. "Karen! Don't!" His voice was gentle but firm, and he was holding her arm, preventing her from going any further down despite her hands already there. She frowned, a bit surprised by his abrupt refusal. "I don't mind." I said no. Somehow, she felt that little thing in his voice that made her understand. She nodded, and to show him it was all right, went back to his lips, calming him down a little. Their kiss got gradually wilder, more passionate, and the heat increased again between their bodies. Her hands kept their gentle stroking going, but soon, it wasn't enough anymore. Cassandra moaned a bit, as their lips got restless, and positioned herself on top of him. She locked her eyes on his, and slowly went down. Cassandra didn't hold her voice back as he slid inside her, pushing her walls and filling her. There was something so satisfying, just to feel him, hard and rocking her throbbing region. She closed her eyes, her hands on his chest, just trying to appreciate those sensations, and move slowly. Karen was mesmerized by the vision of the young concubine on him, indulging herself in pleasure. Her white skin would bloom with undertones of pink, and her long hair falling like a waterfall on her shoulders, balancing along with her movements. He held onto her waist, watching her take control and move her body as she wanted. Cassandra's voice was a melody to his ears, getting deliciously when she was indulging in pleasure, and surely she was. He could feel her clamp and grind around his rod, her lips trembling, her voice translating her pleasure into moans. She kept moving her hips, balancing her body in a gentle dance, holding on to him. At some point, Cassandra locked her emerald eyes onto him. "Karen, move. Please." The war god smiled, answering her smile and demand. Cassandra yelped when he suddenly started moving. She hadn't predicted he would get so excitable. She moaned loudly, the ride getting wilder, leaving her no rest. It was nothing compared to her movements just a few seconds ago. She couldn't control her indecent behavior anymore. She just kept moaning. "Yes, yes, more, yes." He was not going to stop, just for the sake of hearing her beg for it. When she started calling his name, with that worn-out voice, he lost it. The last movements were ruthless and had her crying out, their breathing slowly calmed down, both completely exhausted. All strength had left Cassandra's body. She sighed, and her prince hugged her, holding her in his embrace. Somehow, despite her exhaustion, her body was still too excited for her to calm down enough and sleep yet. She kept her eyes open, her finger drawing circles on her prince's chest. For a long while, they stayed together like this. His hands were gently caressing her back, going up and down her spine. With the silence that had fallen in the room, they could hear the noises coming from the windows. Some exotic birds were chirping. Human voices too, though they were too far and numerous to be understood. Unlike the Onyx Castle, which was completely isolated, the Diamond Palace was still in the heart of a vast city. There was always something going on inside. Cassandra liked this atmosphere. Just the two of them, cuddling in that bedroom, while the world kept itself busy outside. After a while, she heard him sigh, and couldn't help but worry a bit. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I don't like leaving you here," he said. "I'll be back as soon as I can. Don't worry. I'll stay here with Lady Kareen. It will be fine. Just be careful, please." Karen took a deep breath, and kissed her forehead. It didn't feel like enough for Cassandra. She got up a bit, lying on his chest, to come and kiss him properly. The war god wrapped his arms around her, hugging her and answering her kiss. This time, it was a slow, tender kiss. He let Cassandra take the lead. Her thin lips on his were like a flower's petal, so smooth and light. She was getting just a little bit bolder every day, too. He could feel the tip of her tongue, teasing him, giving him a little taste of her and making him thirsty for more. Cassandra smiled, and her lips went left, to kiss his cheek, where his beard was growing. The little spikes she liked to play with were slipping through her fingertips on the other side. Karen smiled, satisfied, letting her gently cover his face with her shy kisses. When she stopped, placing her chin on his torso, he brushed her hair with his fingers, a bit amused. "What are you so amused about?" she whispered. "You've changed. I remember the shy girl who would blush every time I touched her." Cassandra blushed again hearing that, with a little pout. "You were so. You would put your hand under my skirt and say such obscene things." "Did I?" he said, with a little sneer. Cassandra softly slapped his chest. "Yes, you. Putting your hand under my skirt and asking if I was a virgin, too. You just enjoyed teasing me so much." Karen smiled, and while she wondered what he was thinking, she suddenly felt his hand sliding between her thighs, making her yelp in surprise. The war god gently caressed her opening, but she was still so wet and sensitive from their wild activity just before. Cassandra was already shivering. Was it like this? Or, just as he played, his finger moved between her wet lips, making her moan again. Her legs tensed up, and Cassandra bit her lip, sending him an offended look. Karen chuckled, amused, and came to kiss her temple, though it was obvious his concubine was sulking a little bit. She moved slightly, and pushed his hand with a sullen look. "So mean," she whispered. "Mh." He obviously had no remorse or intention to apologize for his past behavior. Cassandra sighed. She was so scared back then. The prince suddenly taking an interest in her had been completely unexpected. Thinking about it, her feelings for him had evolved so quickly. She had been caught in a storm and happy to submit. Karen gently kissed her temple again, caressing her hair gently. She couldn't ignore him, she just enjoyed his touch so much. Cassandra smiled and wrapped her hands around his neck, locking him into some more kisses. It had been a while since they had been able to rest and snuggle together, without worrying about any event to attend or anyone to accompany. "Karen, why didn't you take any other concubines before me?" she asked, feeling a bit curious. He sighed, frowning a bit. He didn't like that question. They both knew he'd had concubines in the past, but none of those women had made it out alive. They weren't picked by him, either. Cassandra clearly remembered Nebara's words. All the concubines Karen had been presented with were sent by his brothers or father. From their meeting, she had somehow assumed it was natural for him to take new concubines on a whim, as it was for any prince. However, she had been proven very wrong as soon as she arrived at the Onyx Castle. Not only did Karen not have any other concubines, but he also didn't show much interest in any woman besides her. His glare and disgust towards the women that had tried to seduce him previously had made her realize, he absolutely loathed that kind of behavior. She truly was the only woman he ever showed any arousal or interest towards. He didn't care about any other woman, no matter how young or beautiful she was. As a healthy young man, it was a bit surprising. "I hate those women," he whispered. "The concubines. You didn't ask about my bedroom. The one in the Imperial Palace." "No. I figured you didn't want to talk about it, and I didn't want to pry." The prince sighed. For a while, Cassandra wondered if he was going to end the topic there. He put an arm over his face, covering his eyes. He didn't look sad, just bothered. She felt a bit unsure, as she couldn't see his expression. Was it too sensitive to bring up? She hesitated a bit on what to add, biting her lip. "Karen. That room. We lived there when I was younger. Sherian, mother, and I. One night, when I was 12 or 13, I woke up. It was very late. I was feeling sick, strange. I didn't know what it was. Then I realized I wasn't alone. A servant woman was there. In your bedroom. In my bed. She was on me. Sucking me. I stayed there. I couldn't move. I felt like a monster was trying to eat me. I got mad. Cray got mad, and we killed that woman. I'm not sure exactly what happened." "You saw the room?" Cassandra was speechless. She clearly remembered that bedroom. It was as if a beast had gone berserk inside. It was Karen and Cray's wrath that had been unleashed inside. The young concubine felt her heart going crazy inside her chest. She was mad and terribly sad. She was sickened by what had happened to her prince. He was so young. How could that woman do such a thing? For a minute, she had a hard time calming down and holding in her tears. Never had she seen such a vulnerable side of her prince, or even imagined he had one. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "Don't be. That woman is dead." "But, why did she?" "She was probably trying to become a concubine. Some women target the imperial families so they can improve their lives this way." Cassandra felt utterly disgusted. How greedy could a human being be? To go ahead and rape a young boy. She had never been so shocked before. She had always felt like the imperial family was absolutely untouchable, always the ones inflicting the pain, the ones in control of other people's fate. Never in a million years would she have imagined they were the target of such monsters. No wonder the prince was so disgusted at those lecherous women, after what he had gone through. Then, 2 of the concubines he had been sent afterward had tried to kill him. How could he still believe in any woman after that? He was seen as prey by those monsters from such a young age. The war god had grown to be the man he was because he had learned to fight the worst kind of monsters from a young age. "She was the first person I ever killed," he whispered. Mother found out in the morning. She got rid of the body, and we moved back to the Diamond Palace again. She kept as few servants as possible, but I wasn't afraid. I would just murder anyone if I had a doubt. I kept killing. My father sent me to the front, where I could unleash as much as I wanted. It wasn't the same, but somehow, the sight of blood helped me more than anything else. So that's how you became the war god so young. I felt like I belonged on the battlefield more than anywhere else. I hated being here, or in the Imperial Palace. I slept better on the ground than in any bed. Cassandra suddenly remembered how desolated and empty the Onyx Castle always seemed. Any of Karen's bedrooms, she had always thought they didn't look like anyone lived there, and no one did. The prince avoided those places, preferring his army tent. Everything made so much sense now. When I met you, you were the first woman that didn't care. You showed only fear. Any woman I had met, no matter how scared they were, there was always that thing in their eyes. That slight hope that I might get interested in them, and make them my concubine. That greed, the same greed I had seen in that woman's eyes. I'd rather kill them. He took his arm out of the way, to come and gently caress her soft cheek. You were the only one. You didn't lust for me. You were just scared. When I tried to tease you, see if you'd show your true colors, your lust as a woman, you just turned out to be even more innocent than I had thought. When that woman hurt you, Lyria, my former master's concubine. Yet, I saw, the way she looked at me, and the way you looked at her. You were different. Somehow, I understood why Cray liked you. You were just pure. So pure. You didn't have that greed that was in her eyes, not even the will to save yourself. You were just scared of me. Cassandra sighed. It was all so sad. She hadn't thought much about their first encounter. The war god was so indecipherable back then. She would have never imagined he looked at her that way. That certainly explained a lot. Is that why you didn't let me satisfy you? Karen caressed her lips with his thumb, slightly nodding. I don't want to see you like that, I don't need that. I understand, she whispered. They stayed silent for a few seconds, just staring in each other's eyes lovingly. Cassandra could tell, there wasn't anything the war god feared anymore in women. Instead, it had been replaced by this wrath, this bloodthirst. The way he had found to cope had become his way of life. The blood that dirted his sword, the way he had dirted his hands to save himself. She was falling a bit deeper for that man. How was he still able to love her so tenderly, after what he had gone through? Karen had such a loving side, just for her. She smiled and gently kissed him again. The war god answered her kiss, caressing her hair, her cheek. Cassandra deepened their kiss, taking the reins. She wanted him to feel her love for him. He wasn't that scared boy anymore. He had grown into a strong, powerful man, who could kill, but still love. Despite a long and love-filled afternoon nap, they couldn't possibly stay hidden in that bedroom forever. Notably, because Cassandra found herself starving when she woke up and sighed. Her baby was truly eating like a young dragon. She stretched her sore and painful muscles a bit with a groan, sitting on the side of the bed. Karen sat behind her, giving her a quick kiss on the neck. "We have to go," she whispered. "I'm really hungry." "Is it dinner time yet?" "Who cares?" She chuckled. Her prince helped her put her dress back on, while he kept his torso bare, only putting his pants on. Cassandra blushed a little. Though his tone was rather dark, one could still see the red marks on his bronze skin. Now she was the one who left him covered in hickeys. Was he exposing them on purpose? Once she was ready, Cassandra decided to let her hair down, and simply followed her prince out of the bedroom. She hadn't paid much attention when he was taking her there, but this was one of the guest bedrooms. They walked quietly back to Karin's salon, where they could hear people talking and laughing. It was another one of those open rooms, with lots of wild plants everywhere, a few furniture pieces with some rugs and colored cushions for them to rest on. Anur was taking care of his dragon, brushing his scales with some sort of big comb, while Sherian and Karin were talking on the side and having tea. They all turned heads hearing the duo enter. "Oh, look who it is. Where is Miss Andra?" she asked, a bit worried. "I gave her a room for her to rest. Your servant girl Dahlia went to watch over her," said Karin. "I think our dragons chased them away. Anyway, aren't you hungry, Cassandra?" "I am. Is it all right if we have dinner early today?" The imperial concubine immediately ordered for the dinner to be prepared at once, and meanwhile, a full basket of fresh and dried fruits, along with several kinds of nuts, were brought to the young mother-to-be. Cassandra and Karen sat down on the cushions next to Karin's chair. The prince kept his arm around her, and though she was seemingly focused on the green grapes more, Cassandra was resting her back against his torso. On the side, Sherian had a smirk on, staring at the young couple. "I don't know how it goes for your people, Cassie, but here, people usually keep honeymoon after the wedding." Karen replied with a glare, while Cassandra frowned. "Were you eavesdropping again?" "No, you were loud." "You can't blame me, mother dearest here and father are always keeping me busy. I need to find entertainment when I can." Cassandra sent annoyed glances at Sherian anyway. The princess was truly too nosy about their life. She would insist on them being a bit more careful from then on. They hadn't shown much restraint, and with all the open roofs here, it was true that a lot of ears could easily hear them. Karin clicked her tongue. "You unruly child! Getting to the north will hopefully cool your wild ideas." "Of course, mother. When you send me to an army full of hunky soldiers." Karin clicked her tongue again and tried to slap her shoulder, but Sherian was quick to move and get away from her reach. Cassandra couldn't help but wonder how the princess would do at the camp. She remembered Evan, Orwen, and all the soldiers that had helped her put together the Red Room there. Even her friends at the Onyx Castle. If she hadn't been pregnant, she probably would have gone there instead. However, it was best for her to stay here until her son was born, under Karin's protection and where she could easily have access to a doctor and servants to tend to her. "Sherian, could you deliver letters if I give them to you?" asked Cassandra. "Where to?" "I'm not a courier." "Don't worry, it's for the Onyx Castle and the army camp. If you can even just give them to the servants there, they'll know what to do." "Fine then." Cassandra felt a bit relieved. She would at least be able to write to Nebera and the girls, and to Evan and Orwen, too. The two men had been such help to her at the camp. She hoped they both were doing well. The servants started bringing in dinner, as grand as usual, with lots of meats, fish, fruits, and everything Cassandra loved. After living together for a few weeks previously, the imperial concubine was well aware of her tastes, and the Diamond Palace was more than ready to satisfy the pregnant lady's appetite. The smell of the cooked meat actually even attracted Cray and Rune, who started bickering again on the side when Karen threw a big piece at them. The two young dragons obviously had more fun fighting about it than actually eating the meat. Thankfully, the garden in the open room they had dinner in was wide enough for the two to get wild without risking injuring the humans present. Miss Andra and Dahlia appeared a few minutes later, having smelled the delicious food all the way to the bedrooms. As they had all skipped lunch for various reasons, they were all more than happy to start eating early. Cassandra was amazed a bit more every day about her tremendous appetite. She still had about 3 months of pregnancy ahead, but her baby had her eat almost as much as her prince. Of course, it didn't bother anyone around her, and actually, Corinne wasn't surprised at all, and kept encouraging her to eat more. Miss Andra too was starting to look a bit better. She was eating, and somehow, Dahlia and she seemed to have gotten closer, chatting about the herbs they could pick for the healing decoction Miss Andra wanted to try making. "Lady Corinne, would it be all right for us to go out tonight?" asked Cassandra. Miss Andra has never seen the Diamond City, and their celebrations are still going on in the streets. "Would it be all right for people from the imperial family to go out?" whispered Miss Andra, a bit surprised. "Of course," said Corinne. "People are used to seeing me. What do they expect, that I stay locked up in my palace all year long? I may be an imperial concubine, but I am a free woman and the owner and ruler of this place. Of course, we shall go. Let's have some fun for once." Cassandra smiled. She was a bit excited to participate in the celebrations in the streets like regular folks. It was something she had never been able to do as a slave, and the ones in the palace were different from all the food stalls in the streets and the livelihood of the ordinary people. They finished dinner calmly, only interrupted a few times by the two dragons that were trying to steal some meat as a game. Even the Shisrai showed up, and Corinne gave him the most meat, making his younger brothers sulk and try to steal from him next. The little dragon was quick to escape though, as he could crawl into small spaces they couldn't follow. It was fun for everyone to watch until dinner was over. Even Miss Andra and Dahlia, amused by their antics, seemed to forget about being scared. Once everyone was full and ready, they prepared to go out at sunset. As always, Corinne refused to bring many servants, only a few of them. But with Anur, Sherian, and Karen with them, they didn't need any guards. As they left the Diamond Palace, a whole new world opened to them. The palace was elevated compared to the street and wasn't echoing all of the noises properly. Everything was much more busy and chaotic down there, but Cassandra loved it. She was wearing a fur cloak over her pink dress, as the nights were a bit colder than in the capital. However, Karen was walking so close to her, she wouldn't have been cold anyway. The young ones were excited to be out. Miss Andra had never been to the celebrations of any other city but the capital, and she obviously loved them. Anur, Dahlia, and her, kept running from one stall to another like children, trying the unique foods and seeing the little street shows here and there. One man was demonstrating some dancing monkeys, and a woman was doing a belly dance with some folklore music played by her children. Somehow, the streets were actually so crowded that a lot of people didn't notice the imperial family right away. The road was cleared in front of them as the passers-by recognized the purple outfits and quickly got out of the way, but all of their little group was so cheerful and acting normally that a lot of people didn't pay attention to them. Some small children even ran into Lady Karine at one point, but she didn't care and gently helped one of them up. It was nice for Cassandra to be able to have fun with her sister in the streets without worrying. Miss Andra and her laughed together and tried some new spices, before she took it to Karen, amused. If he was having any fun, the prince wasn't showing it, but he stayed close to her, talking with her and touching her when he could. His hand on her shoulder, around her waist, or simply holding hers were small demonstrations of affection she loved most. For the first time, she was hanging in the streets with her lover, almost like a normal couple. Cassandra wondered what kind of life they would have lived if they had been of normal statuses. She sighed, and seeing the young ones were having fun at some game stall, while Karine and Cherienne were also watching, she turned to her prince. "What is it?" he asked. Cassandra smiled, getting on her toes to kiss him softly. "Nothing. I'm just really happy here. Being here with you. I want us to enjoy this as much as we can before you go." Karen kissed her forehead gently, wrapping his concubine in his arms. "I didn't know you liked these kinds of things so much. The celebrations. It's just. I never really got to stand among the people as a free woman or enjoy any of this before. I'm happy when I see my sister acting like the young girl she is. I'm happy when we get to stroll like this, without any threats, any plots, or any rivals." The atmosphere of the imperial palace was so suffocating at times, Cassandra couldn't help but feel such a difference now that she was out. Even if it was for a short time, she just wanted to enjoy this as much as she could. Karen kissed her again, caressing her cheek. They were in the middle of the street, in the middle of a crowd, but neither really cared. There were dozens of lovers here, many couples just enjoying the celebrations. They were just a little bit differently clothed. "I'll bring you here again for the celebrations next year," he whispered softly. "And all the years you want after that. Is that a promise?" she asked with a smile. "Yes." He grabbed her chin and gently sealed their promise with a long kiss. Cassandra smiled against her prince's lips, enjoying this little minute of intimacy with him. There was something unique about being able to act like this with her lover, in the middle of a busy street. Like she could show her love to the world, without fear of judgment. A few weeks ago, she was always so afraid of what people would say, what people would think. Now, she was able to act however she wanted with him. Somehow, she had become so comforted by Karen's feelings, she knew nothing could stop her love for him anymore. Cassandra didn't care much if he wasn't vocal about it. He was telling her just enough when she actually needed it. "Hi you! Look!" Miss Andra ran up to them, and ecstatic, put a big flower crown on her older sister's head. She had a wide smile on and had apparently forgotten all her hatred for the imperial family. Cassandra was so happy to finally see her act her age. She had one of those big flower crowns on too, and behind her, Dahlia was playing with some flower bracelets. "Aren't these pretty?" Should you get one for the ceremony? Come. Miss Andra pulled her to come to the flower stall, and check all of the flower crowns. It was the first time she showed interest in the rain ceremony, so Cassandra was happy to check out the items displayed with her. For once, they felt like a pair of sisters hanging out naturally, having fun with their friends, and chatting happily over trivial matters. Cassandra was made to try several crowns by Dahlia and Miss Andra, so many that her hair was covered in petals after a while. The merchant was happy to have caught the girl's attention and was overdoing it with the flattery. "Those white lilies are so fresh, and suit your highness so well. You should try it. Your hair is so beautiful, any of those look perfect on you." Cassandra chuckled. White lilies again. She picked the flower crown, made of ivy, white lilies, and pink lisianthus among some filler leaves. Putting it on in her hair, Cassandra checked herself in the mirror, blushing a bit. She rarely felt so pretty. That evening, her hair was down, she was wearing the pale dress that complemented her rosy cheeks so well, and radiating with happiness. She turned to Karen, standing behind her, to show it. "Do you like it?" she asked. He nodded, but he was clearly looking at her instead of the crown. Cassandra smiled and turned to the merchant. "Could you pack this up for me?" she gently asked. "What are you talking about? You should keep it on," said Miss Andra with a cute pout, Dahlia nodding behind her. "Your sister is right." Behind them, Corinne and Cherienne walked up to them, both looking at the crowns of flowers. The merchant immediately bowed politely to Lady Corinne. Like many people around them, he recognized the ruler and owner of the city. The imperial concubine handed him some money. "You young ladies should have fun. Have your sister and that servant of yours pick some, too." Immediately, Miss Andra and Dahlia's eyes shined in excitement. Those flower crowns were expensive, not something they would have been able to spend their pocket money on. However, the shiny gold coins the imperial concubine had handed the merchant were more than enough for them to pick anything they wanted. They both thanked Corinne profusely, and started picking some flower crowns for themselves, even bullying Anur into trying some too. Cherienne chuckled, crossing her arms while watching the scene. A prince being forced to wear a flower crown by two servant girls. This world is really changing faster than I thought. Mother, you can't spend it all on Anur and the girls. What about your actual daughter? The imperial concubine sneered. What about her? Cherienne frowned, crossing her arms and pouting. Aren't you going to buy me anything, Mother? With this heavy purse of yours? When do you ever gift me something? Gift you something, said Corinne, turning to her with her eyebrow raised. When does this daughter of mine ever visit her mother? I'm already this old, yet neither of my children pampers me or worries about me. What should I buy you anything for? You heartless children seem to be doing well enough without me. Cassandra had the hardest time repressing her laugh while Corinne walked away, looking as proud as ever, and pushing Dahlia and Miss Andra to come and see some food stalls, probably to spoil them more and anger Cherienne. Meanwhile, the princess stayed speechless. That old witch. Old? Her? Who is old? She's going to bury us all. Karen didn't seem much surprised or affected by their mother's rant, but Cherienne went on to sulk and complain about Corinne's attitude. Cassandra chuckled. Despite acting like this towards each other, it was obvious they loved their mother. Even more so watching Cray's attitude with the imperial concubine. She grabbed Karen's hand and pulled him to follow the group, though they walked slowly, keeping a little intimate space around them. "Why don't you visit your mother more often?" she asked. "I don't know. I usually spend my time at the military camp." Cassandra nodded. Sherian had mentioned before that their mother was a bit too nosy about her private activities. And from what Cassandra herself had seen or experienced, she was sure Karine wouldn't have approved either. She caressed her little tummy that was sticking out more and more every day. "What are you thinking?" asked her prince, seeing her lost in her thoughts. "I hope our son will visit me often when I'm older. I'd be sad if he didn't." Karen frowned a bit, looking concerned about her words. Cassandra wondered if this was making him reflect on his attitude, but didn't ask. They walked a bit longer, in silence, following the little group ahead that was enthusiastically checking the stalls. Apparently, Lady Karine was only too happy to spoil the younger ones, probably a bit to piss off Sherian too. "Who will you love more?" "What?" asked Cassandra, surprised by his sudden question. "Who will you love more? Between our son and me?" She was so stunned by his question, she stayed speechless for a while. However, Karen couldn't have looked more serious, with his usual frown on and dark eyes. Cassandra sighed, trying hard not to laugh. "My prince. You can't compare love like that. A mother's love is something unique. Does that mean you love him more?" Cassandra chuckled this time, shaking her head. "Do you think your mother loves you more than the emperor?" "Yes." "Well, maybe that wasn't the best example to use." Cassandra thought for a minute. "What about Princess Sherian then? Do you think your mother loves her more?" This time, Karen looked baffled by her question. He glanced his mother's way, frowning a bit more, and Cassandra waited for him. It was amusing that he would be so baffled by such a simple thing as a mother's love. Sometimes her prince had this incredibly childish side to him. He could fight and win any battle in this world, but jealousy or matters of the heart were a real problem for him to understand. Cassandra got on her toes and kissed his cheek, ending his deep thinking with a gentle smile. Love doesn't need to be shared or compared. It's unique and endless. I love my baby so much, and I love you too. I love you both, but differently." The prince nodded, and replied to her kiss with one on her forehead, then her nose, until he got to her lips. She wasn't sure he had fully understood, but at least, he wasn't frowning anymore, her lips were keeping him busy enough. Suddenly, Cassandra felt some droplets falling on her. She looked up and, sure enough, rain was starting to fall. She smiled wide, exchanging a glance with her prince. The rain. However, the little drops were now starting to come by the hundreds, and the rain was rapidly increasing around them. Karine and the rest of their group quickly gathered, everyone trying to cover themselves. "We should head back," said Sherian. "The locals say this isn't just going to be some light rain, there's a storm coming, and they get nasty in this area." Everyone agreed and, quickly, they walked back to the Diamond Palace. No one had been expecting that rain. The streets were quickly cleared, as the merchants were closing up their stalls and putting their merchandise into a safe place. The palace wasn't far, but by the time they got there, everyone was soaked. The servants ran to hand them some towels to wipe themselves with, but the young imperial concubine was a bit upset at her disheveled hair and messy clothes. What a mess! Like the locals had said, it wasn't just a downpour. Above them, the wind picked up, and the claps of thunder and lightning flashes cloaked the sky in no time. This was truly a thunderstorm, not just rain. In the Diamond Palace, so many rooms had open roofs, Cassandra could hear the rain all around them. Of course, the servants had quickly moved the furniture where it needed to be, being used to the rain, but so many rooms were now unusable. Well, someone wanted rain, sighed Sherian. Should we wait until it calms down, Cassandra dear? Asked Karine. The young concubine nodded, looking a bit sad. It can't be helped. It would be too dangerous to go out in this weather. If it wasn't for the wind and lightning, this rain would actually have been perfect for the ceremony, but Cassandra had to admit, the current conditions weren't good. The wind would have blown things away, and that lightning would be dangerous for anyone outside. Feeling her disappointment, Karen suddenly lifted her up. Karen, she asked, taken by surprise. Without explaining a thing, the prince slowly walked out of the room, leaving everyone else behind, and took Cassandra deeper inside the Diamond Palace. She couldn't help but wonder where he was taking her. She could hear Cray climbing the walls around them and following their path from the outside, but those rooms around them were some she had never been to before. She couldn't tell where they were. Karen was obviously very familiar with the Diamond Palace. He was navigating easily, avoiding the rooms being flooded or taking corridors where they could avoid the downpour from the open roofs. Finally, he put her down in front of a large door and pushed it open. Cassandra took a minute to understand. It was obviously a bathroom and a very large one at that. Actually, the large basin was overflowing with water. This room didn't have a fully open roof per se, but some openings in the walls were letting the heavy rain through, and it was slowly adding up. However, the most interesting part of that room was that instead of being surrounded by 4 or 6 walls like most rooms, this one had only 5. One part of the wall had been left open, giving her an incredible view of the city, and access for Cray to sneak its head in. The large basin was actually going all the way to that open part, and the excess water was being poured down below, overflowing the border of the basin. She was amazed. This was such a strange room, and the tub was almost working as a large natural fountain, being filled by rainwater and flowing on the lower levels. She wanted to get in and go see the full view, but with this windy weather, it was obvious she should stay in the covered part. To her surprise, Karen walked in first, taking off his clothes and going into the water. Behind him, Cray growled, and without warning, spat fire. Cassandra was afraid, seeing Cray do that for the first time, but the dragon wasn't doing it in her direction. Actually, it was burning the water next to Karen, and shortly after, some vapor was visible. Cassandra chuckled and put her feet in the water. It was warm. Cray's fire had heated the water, turning this place into a hot pool. She chuckled and took the hand Karen was offering her to walk in. Cassandra took his hand, blushing slightly, but followed him into the water. She had only taken off her shoes and newly bought flower crown. Karen was carrying Cassandra on his lap, making her chuckle. She had no idea how deep this bath really was, but she could tell her prince was navigating around easily. He took her as far as he could in this pool before the curtain of rain. She was amazed. Not only was the view of the Diamond City absolutely breathtaking, but the majesty of this infinity pool was truly beautiful. Cassandra felt that if her prince were to swim a bit too far, they would fall out. She couldn't see the edge, as the rain was actually blurring the real limit of the water and confusing her perception, making it both exciting and scary. They stayed back far enough though, remaining under the roofed part. The black dragon, standing outside but sticking its head in, didn't seem to mind the downpour much. The rain was rolling down the black scales, while its red eyes were focused on the couple. Cassandra, her arms locked around her prince, couldn't stop smiling. Her whole body was floating in this warm water. It wasn't nearly as hot as the hot springs from the north, but the difference in temperature with the cold rain still made a thin layer of mist float around. It was such a unique scene. Even the room itself was somewhere between eerie and ancient, as if before them, no one had come here in years. Cassandra absolutely loved it. "This is amazing," she whispered. "You like it?" She nodded and turned to her prince, brushing his hair gently. "Why did you think to bring me here? You enjoyed the hot springs, and you seemed sad we couldn't hold the ceremony yet." Cassandra's heart melted once again. How could this man always surprise her with this extreme gentleness and consideration he was hiding under his armor? She nodded, and gently kissed him. She loved any form of bath and he knew it. She loved when they took baths together. The simple sensation of her body immersed in water was one of the most comforting feelings in this world to her. Of course, it was even better when her prince was by her side like this. They kept kissing for a while, tenderly, though their bodies were obviously really close to one another. The layers of her dress were floating around her in the water, while she curled her legs around Karen's, holding on to him. A low growl distracted them a bit. They both turned their heads as Cray was putting the lower part of its maw in the water, staring at them. Cassandra couldn't see it as its body was outside, but she was sure the black dragon was wagging its tail. She had learned to recognize that playful look in the ruby eyes. The dragon couldn't fit more than its shoulders inside, but it was still plenty enough. Cassandra smiled, and detached herself from her prince to go play with the dragon. Cray growled happily, seeing her approach. She gently rubbed its snout, and to play with the dragon a little she dived underneath the surface. She felt the dragon's snout, looking for her in the water, but Cray wasn't a water creature. When she emerged a few feet away, the dragon turned its head, surprised, making her laugh. Cray growled and put its snout in the water, suddenly throwing a whole wave at her. Cassandra laughed and dived in again. This little game between them lasted quite a while. However, after a few minutes, while she was in the water, Cassandra felt some human hands grab her. Karen lifted her up, pulling her into his embrace again. She chuckled. "Were you feeling lonely, my prince? Don't just play with him." Cassandra laughed and kissed him, focusing on her prince despite the jealous growls. With the rain in the background, the sounds of the water, and her dripping hair, she almost felt at home. She and her prince kept kissing lovingly, swimming around in the water as if they were alone. However, Cassandra suddenly paused their kiss, frowning. "What is it?" She went silent again, with a confused expression. Did she just imagine it? She grabbed Karen's hand and pulled it next to hers against her tummy. He touched her right in time, and a second later, it was his turn to have a shocked expression. Cassandra chuckled again, ecstatic. "Did you feel that?" she whispered. The prince nodded, keeping his large hand spread out on her stomach. He had felt it. A little bump under her skin, so weak he had almost missed it. He stayed there again, waiting. "I feel him again," she whispered. "Oh, God! He's moving." Karen frowned. He couldn't feel it anymore, or maybe it was too faint. Yet, Cassandra was completely absorbed in the baby's faint movements. She hadn't thought she would be able to feel them so early. However, it wasn't a mistake. This wasn't her stomach, but her son. She could feel some little movements. Sometimes, they were too faint for her to be sure, and other times, she was sure. They stayed like this for a while, but nothing else happened. It was plenty enough, though. Cassandra couldn't stop smiling from ear to ear. Karen grabbed her hair and gently pulled her closer to him for another kiss. Somehow, he didn't seem to want to take his hand off of her belly, as if he was still hoping for another little hit. "You have to come back to see our son," Cassandra whispered, suddenly becoming much more serious. "Why are you so afraid?" "I don't know. I have a bad feeling," she confessed. "Maybe it's just my pregnancy making me more worried. I just don't like that you won't be here." She sighed and snuggled against his neck, closing her eyes, feeling the warmth of his skin. Karen frowned, caressing her gently. He hadn't realized how much Cassandra needed him more because of her pregnancy. Somehow, she was a bit needier, looking for more of their cuddling than before. He wasn't sure if it was due to their relationship growing or part of the pregnancy, or both. He kept caressing her, letting her rest against his shoulder. He had thought of bringing her here to comfort her, but truly, comforting a pregnant woman was harder than expected. Would she really be all right staying here with his mother? The prince was a bit afraid the young concubine would be lonely or feel too bored. He definitely couldn't bring her to the battlefield, though. He wouldn't even have let her anywhere near a military camp, not when she was pregnant. "I will be back as soon as I can." "I know, and it's your duty. I know it can't be helped. I just don't like that we will be separated again. I'll stay with you as long as you want after the war is over. I'll take you back to the Onyx Castle." Cassandra chuckled. How did he know she missed that place the most? Somehow, she had grown attached to that lonely, isolated castle in the last few months. She was surprised herself to be missing it so much. She nodded against his skin. After a while, however, the wind picked up even stronger and Cray flew away, annoyed. Without the dragon to heat it up, the water was going to get cold soon. Cassandra and Karen got out of the water while they were still feeling warm. Somehow, right behind the doors, the servants had already brought some thick towels. Cassandra abandoned her dress there, knowing someone would come and pick it up, and wrapped herself in one of the very large towels. Once again, the war god, who never seemed to feel the cold, only wrapped it around his hips, letting his natural heat dry him. He picked Cassandra up off the ground and carried her gently back to their room to change into her nightgown. She was now dry, but the young concubine still took her time brushing her messy hair and put it up into a long braid for the night. The servants had brought a little tray of food, including her favorite green grapes and cheese cubes, with some mulled wine. Surely, Lady Karine had ordered this. Cassandra felt a bit guilty for wanting to eat again, but she couldn't help it. She sat on the bed, grabbing the little bowl of grapes, and pouring some of the cheese cubes on top. For some reason, she almost wanted to see the cheese melt on top of it. Karen laid down next to her. He had already helped himself to some wine and was caressing her back, letting her eat all she wanted. It's really impressive. I'm hungrier than I ever was, even when I had been unable to eat for days. Babies are truly something, she whispered. Are you tired? Or is your back painful? Cassandra stretched her back a bit. It was true her lower back pain was constant those days, but it was a really mild pain, not something she would complain about. At least she was grateful to be over her nausea. She hadn't had any for several days now. I'm fine. Just hungry like a dragon. Karen chuckled and kept rubbing her back. When Cassandra leaned to take the mulled wine, however, he frowned. Cassandra. Just a little sip on my tongue, she promised. For the taste. Despite his frowning, he let her take a little bit, as promised. He was afraid his mother's bad habits would slowly transfer onto the young concubine somehow. Hence, Karen was quick to take the glass out of her hands and finish it in one go. Cassandra didn't even protest. Her thoughts were already elsewhere. The baby. Maybe we should find him a name already. You can pick whatever you want. Really? Karen nodded. He didn't really care, and trusted Cassandra fully. The young concubine wasn't surprised or disappointed. She slowly smiled, trying to think. She would have loved to give the baby a name from the Rain tribe, but this was a future dragon prince they were talking about. She couldn't risk picking something too odd. What about a dragon empire name then? She quite liked them. How did your mother pick your name? And Sherian's? Do you know? She just took hers and twisted it. Concubines like to give names similar to theirs to their children. Cassandra could understand. Among the many children of the emperor, this was a way to remind him of themselves through their children. She doubted Karine had exactly the same idea, though. It was probably her own possessiveness over her children rather than her relationship to the emperor that had prevailed. Karen. What about your siblings? The others? Do you know their names? He nodded. My mother has them buried here. I saw their names on the stones. Swyren, Shanine, Cassin. Cassandra felt her heart pinch a bit at each name. She couldn't forget the painful words of the imperial concubine over her children's deaths. There was one question she had been curious about, though. How is Sry still alive? I thought a dragon died after his tamer passed, but there are exceptions, aren't there? He was old enough. Newborn dragons are more fragile. Most die with us if we die young. Cassandra nodded. That explained why Sry had been the only one to survive. According to Karine, the young Swyren, her firstborn, had died at 6. Apparently, it was enough for his dragon to survive, even disabled. But her second and fourth children had died as infants. She put protective hands around her belly. How did the abandoned dragons feel? Missing a part of themselves. She couldn't imagine Cray without Karen, or the other way around. Would her baby be as close to his dragon? She couldn't wait to meet both of them. Her two babies, the human and the dragon one. Cassandra silently promised herself, with or without Karen, she would protect their child. She would do anything for him. Cassandra. He gently pulled her into his embrace, taking her away from her deep thinking. Cassandra chuckled, putting her half-emptied bowl to the side, and snuggled against him. "I'm tired," she said. "Then sleep. If the rain calms down, we will have our ceremony tomorrow morning." "I hope so." Cassandra had no problem falling asleep that evening. She was soothed by the sounds of the downpour outside, the wind shimmering in the leaves, and the slow breathing of he prince against her ear. A peaceful sleep after a nice evening outing, and a long, warm bath was just the best. When she woke up the next morning, her senses immediately picked up the sound of the downpour, still ongoing outside. She smiled and turned around to face Karen. However, she was surprised to find her prince still deep asleep. This was a first. He would usually wake up the second she moved. Yet, Karen was still obviously sleeping, with his slow, steady breath and serene expression. Cassandra bit her lip, only too happy to secretly witness such a precious moment. He looked a bit younger when he wasn't frowning or glaring with those dark obsidian eyes of his. She loved being able to scrutinize him from up close. She often forgot their age difference. He was a grown man, while she had just barely gotten to adulthood. She brushed his beard with her fingertips. He hadn't cut it in a few days, but she liked it. As Cassandra was still caressing his beard as gently as possible, Karen swiftly moved to wrap his arm around her, his eyes still closed. The young concubine pouted a bit. "So you were awake after all." She chuckled and came a bit closer to gently kiss his lips. Karen smiled, but for once, didn't give in, letting Cassandra spread her kisses on his lips, on his beard, and on his cheekbones. He could tell she was just having fun teasing him. He let her do that until she got bored and pushed him over to get on top of him. Only then did the war god consent to open his eyes to see the face of his smiling concubine. "Good morning, my prince," she whispered. "Good morning. It's still raining," she said with a smile. "I hear that." Cassandra chuckled. She knew his faint answers were part of his character, not a lack of interest. She kissed him once more and got out of the bed. She was a bit more excited about this than she thought. The gentle music of the heavy rain outside was making her happy, and the thought that they could finally do the ceremony. As always, the servants came in shortly after they had woken up, bringing a new set of clothes, and disappearing as soon as possible. Cassandra wondered how they always knew. She put on the new dress and tried to sort out her messy curls. The rain had done no justice to her chocolate brown hair. She had to spend some extra time taming it and left it untied, knowing it was no use in that humidity. "Lady Cassandra." Dahlia was gently knocking at the door, bringing in another large tray of food for breakfast. The young girl smiled upon entering. Lady Karine sent me to give you your breakfast. Did you sleep well? The young servant was apparently only too happy to be back to her old habits of assisting Cassandra. She even helped her arrange her hair a bit and put on the flower crown they had bought the previous day. As they chatted about the previous evening, Karen was getting up and getting ready behind them. He walked to Cassandra's side to give her a quick kiss and grabbed some of the meat on the tray before leaving. Dahlia's shoulder relaxed a little as soon as the war god was out of the room, making Cassandra chuckled. "Are you still scared?" asked Cassandra. "It cannot be helped, Lady Cassandra. I've been raised to always fear the imperial family. I understand that imperial concubine Karine, the third prince, and Lady Sherian are different, but still. Old habits die hard." Cassandra understood that better than anyone else. It had taken her weeks to fully trust Karen, his sister, and his mother, and even now, she was unable to approach any member of the imperial family without that fear automatically growing in her stomach. She had no idea where he had gone, but Cassandra enjoyed the bit of time she had alone with Dahlia. Apparently, she and Miss Andra had gotten quite close and stayed together late into the night to chat. Her sister was still asleep, but the rest of the inhabitants were all up already. Most couldn't sleep well because of the storm from the previous night. The thunder had only calmed down late in the night, but Cassandra was among those few people it hadn't bothered at all. "Lady Karine has been very busy preparing everything for the rain ceremony," explained Dahlia, her hands busily braiding some of Cassandra's hair. "She said she wants to have it done before the rain stops. I don't think it will stop so soon, but..." Cassandra nodded while eating breakfast. She didn't think so either. She could recognize when a downpour was going to last, and this was definitely one of those. The actual storm was over and the wind had calmed down, leaving only regular sounds of heavy rain. She closed her eyes, letting Dahlia finish her hairdo while eating in silence, just listening to the rain. This sound was so familiar. She was born during a storm like the one on the previous day. Now that she thought about it, her baby had been conceived during a snowstorm. This was such a cute coincidence. Maybe it would take another of those for him to be born. "Lady Cassandra? What are you smiling about?" asked Dahlia. "I was just thinking a little. Are we finished?" "Just a little bit more. I want to see if I can adjust this." "Hi you." Miss Andra showed up at the door looking tired, but tightly wrapped in a big fur cloak. She looked a bit cold, but her cheeks were of a rosy shade. She walked up to them, looking happy. "I love those flower crowns. Hi you, did you have your breakfast? Do you want more? Prince Anur showed us where to find the kitchens yesterday." Cassandra chuckled. "Aren't you close to Anur now? For him to show you around?" Miss Andra pouted. "Don't start treating me like a child." Sulking a bit, she grabbed some of Cassandra's breakfast, biting into one of the cheese cubes hungrily. The older sister chuckled. Actually, she was happy whenever Miss Andra acted her age. She was obviously a lot more comfortable now that they were in the Diamond Palace, enough to befriend Anur at least. The rain probably raised her younger sister's spirits, too. After bickering a bit more, all three young women headed out of the room. Cassandra only had to follow Dahlia, who had apparently been woken up early too to prepare for the ceremony. Finally, they reached a large room. Cassandra recognized it instantly. It was one of Lady Corinne's favorite salons, one with an open roof and lots of green plants sprouting wildly from all sides. This time though, all the furniture had been taken out as the rain was pouring in. It was all right though, the floor had some crevices where the water would flow in, as dozens of little rivers headed towards the outer parts or the fountain on the side. Cassandra had always wondered how the Diamond Palace could have so many open rooms, but now, it was obvious that most rooms were properly conceived for the water to be expelled one way or another. This one was actually rather perfect for the ceremony. It had a square shape, was letting the downpour in, and yet the floor wasn't completely flooded, only a thin layer of water remained under their feet. "How is it, dear?" asked Corinne, walking up to her in one of her gorgeous magenta dresses. "It looks perfect, Lady Corinne. But do we have everything?" The imperial concubine clicked her tongue. "Don't you dare underestimate me, young lady. Dahlia, take her to the other bedroom where we have everything. And someone go wake up that sleepy-head daughter of mine." Cassandra was swiftly pushed to another room. She had thought she would get ready in her room, but once she walked inside, she understood why she couldn't. In front of her, a gorgeous green and gold dress was displayed. It was the first time in years she saw what looked like a real ceremonial outfit from her tribe, and tears came to her eyes right away. There was even the veil, and all the golden embroideries had obviously been handmade. "Do you like it, Hainu?" asked Miss Andra, excited. "Dahlia and I stayed up late last night to finish it. We had some help from other servants, of course," added Dahlia. "But we all followed Miss Sandra's instructions down to the letter to have it as close to your real ceremonial outfit as possible. Do you like it?" "It's gorgeous," whispered Cassandra, unable to find any more words to describe it. Indeed, the dress was divine and just as beautifully made as her usual pink dresses. The gorgeous green silk was of the best quality, shimmering with several shades as she touched it, and the gold threads had been embroidered so well, to retrace the traditional arabesques she remembered all over it. The piece of cloth didn't have a single gem on it, but it was shining and glowing better than any treasure. The girls had even prepared, with Lady Corinne's help, some jewelry to add to her outfit. "Hainu, look! We couldn't find Borean ink, but I made something similar. I tested it, so your skin should be able to bear it just fine." Indeed, the blue ink in the little pot she was handing her looked very similar to proper Borean ink. Cassandra put the pot aside, and took the two girls in her arms to hug them. "Thank you so much, Dahlia, Miss Andra. Thank you for preparing all this for me." Both Miss Andra and Dahlia were surprised by this sudden hug, but happily responded to it. After that, all three of them chuckled, excited, and it was high time they helped Cassandra get ready. A while later, Karen was waiting outside, wearing a similar green silk piece of clothing. For the tall warrior, the girls had only made a large cloak, which he was wearing over his shoulders, with some black pants. Karen wasn't very familiar with anything about the Rain Tribe's ceremony, but when Miss Andra came up to him, he listened to her. "Could you just stand there? Right there, please. All right, and if you can wait a bit, my sister is coming." She ran back inside and suddenly, Cassandra appeared. Everyone was completely speechless. The young concubine was more beautiful than she'd ever been. The long green dress was tightly wrapped around her body, showing her curves more than the usual pink dresses. It was only covering her chest, belly, and legs, so her back and arms were nude, only her hair running down. The visible pieces of her skin were actually shining with a strange light, like some thin silver shimmer. Anyone in the room could see that the emerald dress was absolutely gorgeous on her, and with that flower crown and the painting on her skin, she looked like she had just stepped out of a large painting, like a nature goddess. Several male servants had their mouths wide open in surprise, and even the girls were blushing, shocked by how pure yet sensual she looked at that moment. However, the most stunned of all was Karen. The war god was looking at his young concubine with such a deep expression on his face. His deep black eyes were mesmerized by the vision before him. He was struck, not shocked by how beautiful she was, but how even more beautiful she could be. For maybe the first time, he wasn't just quiet. He was speechless. Cassandra had always been a gorgeous young woman, a flower that bloomed in adversity, but that day, for the first time, she was able to shine in all of her glory. The war god, behind his impassible facade, was properly stunned. In terms of natural beauty, Cassandra was indisputably beautiful. All the jewels and attires of the concubines of the imperial palace couldn't beat such a natural beauty. Though they were of different shades, the deep green of her dress was complementing her eyes perfectly. Her brown hair was falling in natural curls on her shoulders and down on her back and belly, with that crown they had bought together on top. Several of the servants whispered about her looks, but the rain covered any sound, and the war god wouldn't have been able to hear them anyway. All of his senses had gone numb as he could only focus on the holy vision in front of his eyes. Cassandra gracefully walked up to him, like a nymph, with a gentle smile on her face. He could barely recognize the woman he held in his arms every night. There was something unspeakably different about her, as if she was from another world, another realm. She took his hand. "Karen? Are you all right? You're beautiful," he whispered, as if saying that truth would release him from this trance. Cassandra blushed, as always, feeling a bit proud. She hadn't thought she would be able to cause such emotion in her usually undecipherable war god. The rain was falling around them, but they didn't care. It was just as if the two of them had been alone. The green clothes were slowly getting wet, but they were still very pretty to observe. Miss Andra walked up to them. "Since I'm the only one aside from Hainu who knows about the ceremony, I'll tell you two what to do. Dahlia, bring the thread, please." While Miss Andra took the silver thread and started gently wrapping it around both of their wrists, in a complex ensemble of knots, Karen's eyes were on Cassandra's skin. The shimmering from earlier was actually that strange ink that she had used to paint herself with. From the look of it, those weren't simply lines and strange shapes, but obviously some foreign language he couldn't decipher at all. He frowned. "What do those say?" Cassandra blushed a bit, looking down, and her younger sister was the one to answer. "The partners can paint whatever they want on their bodies as a sign of affection. Hainu put your name and titles with the symbols of protection, health, and strength." Karen was surprised. He kept looking at all those strange scriptures on her skin, unable to decipher what was which. "Do it on me, too." "What? With that ink? I want to write her name." Miss Andra sighed. But I'm almost done with the silk thread. Hainu, you didn't tell him earlier about the Borean ink. Just bring it to me, please, said Cassandra, with an apologetic look. While Miss Andra pouted and kept doing her knots, Dahlia ran over, with an umbrella in one hand and the little bowl of ink and a brush in the other. There wasn't much left of what Miss Andra had prepared, as Cassandra had painted a lot on herself already. She took the brush with her available hand and pushed the cloak a bit to access his torso. "What do you want me to write?" she whispered to him. "Your name." "Are you sure?" "Just my name." "Yes." Cassandra chuckled, and proceeded to do as asked. It was so like him. No prayers, just her name. She knew Karen wasn't a man to believe in prayers or divine will. He only trusted himself and the people he cared about. She wrote her name on his skin, as many times as she could before running out of ink. The ink Miss Andra had made wasn't as good as the real Borean ink and was already starting to drip a bit because of all the rain, but this was good enough. The silver ink shined strangely on the war god's torso and arms. Maybe because of his natural musculature, they looked more like tribal fighting signs than his favorite's name. "All right, I'm done," said Miss Andra, looking satisfied. Dahlia swiftly walked away, going under the little porch to shelter herself from the rain, close to Sherian and Kareen. Mother and daughter were standing side by side and watching the ceremony attentively, not saying a word. They were aware that although there wasn't anything official about this ceremony was sacred to Cassandra's people. As they knew nothing about this foreign custom, they were silently watching, curious. Cassandra and Karen's wrists were now tied together by that silk thread. The gentle fabric wasn't painful on their skin, but their wrists couldn't move, being tied so tightly together with those complex knots. Cassandra looked at her left wrist and Karen's right wrist, with a smile. She had never thought she would get to have this ceremony ever, let alone with a prince, and a man she loved. Karen chuckled. "Are you so happy?" he said. "Yes, I feel a bit like it's a dream." "Sorry, we can only do this for now." "No, it's plenty," Cassandra whispered, her cheeks blooming with pink. "All right, if you two are done being so mushy," said Miss Andra. "I'll start." "Hainu, should I translate it into our tongue or theirs?" "Just do it in our tongue and I'll translate in the Dragon Empire's tongue, Miss Andra." "Understood." Then Miss Andra took a deep breath and took a couple of steps back, opening her hands, palms towards the sky, and closed her eyes. She started speaking, and Cassandra repeated in words everyone else could understand. Both sisters talking in the exact same rhythm, one echoing the other. "Today is the day of rain, the sacred day. As the sky god is showering the earth goddess with love, their children are born with the rain. We are children of the rain, children of sacred love. Oh, God of water, let your rain pour, and hear your children today, for they carry their faith, love, and joy in their heart too. Oh, God of water, Son of the sky and earth, if love is your eyes, let them see. If love is your tongue, let it speak. If you can hear us, hear your children's pledge of love today, as we share it with you." Cassandra was talking softly while staring at Karen, their eyes not leaving each other's a single second. "Oh, God of water, our ancestors taught us love. Help us teach our children too. We'll share that love to all of your children, from all rivers they come, from all seas they come. Let us speak of love, and let our hearts beat together. Let your love flow in our veins and words, for you showed us how to love with your rain. Gather your children together under the rain, gather us, and remind us how to love if we forget. Teach us to be patient, kind, sincere, and truthful. Teach us love, teach us how to cry, and pray. Fill our lives with love, water, and grace. Oh, God of water, your children are thankful today, as with love you teach us the way again. On the side, Kareen shed a little tear, impressed. Even the servants were all feeling sensitive to the words of Cassandra, and the prayer that echoed in the walls despite the rain. Both sisters took a little pause, breathing deeply before reciting again. Oh, God of water, your children will remember. We will remember your love is patient, kind, sincere, and truthful. We shall not give in to anger, and we shall not give in to evil. We shall not lie, and we shall not betray. Your children promise to remember, each day the rain falls, how love is patient, kind, sincere, and truthful. Oh, God of water, your love has no beginning and no end. Your love is blind and deaf. Your love is infinite. Miss Sandra's voice suddenly broke into tears. Something in her memories kept her from going on. She kept hanging her hands in front of her, but she was crying, unable to continue. Cassandra understood why it hurt so much for her sister. She took a deep breath, and continued alone, while Kareen walked over to gently hug Miss Sandra's shoulders. Oh, God of water, your children of the rain shall not lie, and they shall not hurt. I will be blind and deaf if I can't see or hear love. Oh, God of water, your children gather today, in harmony, to love again. Oh, God of water, hear our prayer. Your children will give up their wealth, their bodies, and their mind for love. Cassandra took a deep breath and gestured for Karen to take one of the ends of the silk thread, while she took the other. Rain has come to us blind and deaf. Rain will witness our love today. I give my wealth, my body, and my mind for this love of mine. She mimicked with her lips for Karen to repeat her words. I give my wealth, my body, and my mind for this love of mine. I will love eternally, in the eyes of my beloved, and in the eyes of the water god. I will love eternally, repeated Karen, in the eyes of my beloved, and in the eyes of the water god. I swear to keep my love patient, kind, sincere, and truthful until I die. I swear to honor the water god in every way, until I return into his arms, side by side with my beloved. Once again, the war god repeated without flinching. Oh, God of water, love is infinite. Love is mine. You are mine. Love is infinite. Love is mine. Almien. Cassandra was surprised to hear Karen had translated the last word by himself. She was shocked and incredibly overwhelmed. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.